stood in the Hall of Smiths and watched her world fall apart. The master smith, an old with scales faded to gray, held her armor in his 4 hands. He turned it slowly, studying the cracks that ran through the crystalline weave like frozen lightning. His expression said everything before his words did. "It cannot be saved," he said. "The neural weave has fractured beyond repair. The damage is too deep." Felt the words hit her chest like a physical blow. This armor had been worn by her mother during the Liberation War. Her grandmother had carried it through the Siege of Al. 12 generations of her bloodline had worn this armor into battle and brought it home again. 12 generations of honor, of sacrifice, of victory. And now it would end with her. "There must be something," she said. Her voice came out steady, but inside she was breaking. "Some technique, some method we have not tried." The master smith shook his head slowly. "I have consulted with every craftsman on this station. I have sent images to the answer is the same everywhere. The crystal has died, warrior. It cannot be brought back to life." Took the armor from his hands. It felt heavier than it should, as if the weight of all those generations now pressed down on her shoulders. She had worn this armor 3 days ago when raiders attacked her patrol ship. She had fought hard and killed many enemies, but one of them had gotten close enough to strike her chest with a plasma blade. The armor had saved her life, and in doing so it had given its own. She walked through the station corridors in a daze. Others passed her and nodded with respect. They did not know yet. Soon everyone would know. Soon she would be the warrior who lost her family's armor, the one who broke a chain stretching back centuries. Commander found her near the observation deck. He was tall with dark green scales and the bearing of a soldier who had seen many wars. "I heard the news," he said. "I am sorry, truly." "Sorry does not fix armor," she replied. "No, it does not." He paused. "But there is something you should know. There are rumors among the lower decks. Some say that human engineers can sometimes repair things that others cannot." Looked at him with disbelief. "Humans? You want me to take my ancestral armor to humans?" "I am only telling you what I have heard. The humans have strange methods, crude perhaps, but sometimes effective. Their technology is primitive compared to ours." "Yes," agreed. "But they are creative in ways we are not. I have seen them fix machines using nothing but wire and hope. I do not understand how they think, but I cannot deny the results." Considered this. She had little respect for humans. They were soft creatures, fragile, short-lived. They had only recently joined the galactic community, and their technology was at least 200 years behind them. The idea of letting human hands touch her sacred armor felt wrong. But so did giving up. "Where is their engineering bay?" she asked. The human section of Horizon's Edge was smaller than the quarter. It smelled different too, like metal and oil and something sweet that could not identify. She found the engineering bay at the end of a narrow corridor. Inside, 2 humans were working on some kind of machine. One was tall with brown hair and a loud laugh. The other was shorter, with tired eyes and grease stains on his hands. They both looked up when she entered. "Can we help you?" the shorter one asked. Held out her armor. "I was told humans can sometimes fix things others cannot. This armor was damaged in battle. Our smiths say it cannot be repaired." The tall one whistled low. "Ceremonial armor. That is some serious hardware. I am Ben, by the way, and this is Jake." The shorter one, Jake, stepped forward. He took the armor gently from her hands and studied it with careful eyes. He turned it slowly, just as the master smith had done, but his expression was different. Where the smith had seen death, this human seemed to see a puzzle. "The neural weave is fractured," explained. "The crystal has died." "Maybe," Jake said. He did not look up from the armor. "Maybe not." Ben shook his head. "Jake, this is tech. We do not have the tools or the knowledge to work on something like this." "We have hands," Jake replied, "and eyes and time. He finally looked at, "I cannot promise anything, but I would like to try." Felt strange. This small human, with his grease-stained hands and tired eyes, spoke with quiet confidence. Not the arrogance of someone who thought he was better than others, just the simple certainty of someone who was not ready to give up. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "You do not know me. This armor means nothing to you." Jake shrugged. "Because it means something to you, and because everyone else said it could not be done. That is usually when I get interested." Did not understand this human. His logic made no sense to her, but she had no other options left. "Very well," she said. "You may try, but know this, human. If you damage the armor further, if you show it disrespect, there will be consequences." Jake met her eyes without fear. "I understand. I will treat it like it was my own family's treasure." Left the armor with him and walked away. She did not believe he could succeed. No one could. But there was a small spark of something in her chest that she had not felt since the master smith spoke his terrible words. It felt almost like hope. That night, long after the station's lights had dimmed for sleep cycle, Jake sat alone in the engineering bay. He held the armor under a bright lamp and studied every inch of it with a magnifying lens. The crystalline neuroweave was beautiful, even broken. It was technology far beyond anything humans had created. But technology was still technology. It followed rules. It had logic. And where there was logic, there was always a chance. Jake noticed something deep in one of the cracks. A faint flicker, so small he almost missed it. The Smiths had declared the crystal dead. But Jake had seen dead before. He had watched machines die and stay dead. This was not dead. This was sleeping. He leaned back in his chair and smiled for the first time in days. They had given up too soon. They saw the cracks and assumed the worst. But Jake had grown up on a colony world where nothing worked right and everything broke twice a week. He had learned early that broken did not mean finished. He would fix this armor. He did not know how yet, but he would find a way. He always did. 3 days passed and Jake barely slept. He worked on the armor every moment he could spare. His regular duties on the station still needed attention, but every free hour belonged to the crystals. Ben watched him with growing concern. "You are going to kill yourself over this," Ben said on the third morning. "Have you eaten anything today?" "I had coffee." "Coffee is not food, Jake." Jake did not answer. He was too focused on the delicate work in front of him. He had built a small heating chamber from spare parts and was slowly warming the armor to precise temperatures. The would have been horrified. Their smiths never used heat on neuroweave after it was formed. They believed it would destroy the crystal structure. But Jake had a theory. The neuroweave was not like normal crystal. It was grown, not carved. It had patterns that reminded him of organic tissue, like the nerve fibers he had studied in biology class back on Earth. And organic things responded to heat in interesting ways. He watched the temperature gauge climb slowly. 60 degrees, 70, 80. At 90 degrees something happened. The faint flicker he had seen before grew stronger. Not much, just a little, but it was there. The crystal was not dead. It was dormant, like a seed waiting for spring. Came to check on her armor that afternoon. She found Jake talking to it. "Come on," he was saying, his face close to the crystalline surface. "I know you are in there, just give me a sign. Show me what you need." Stood frozen in the doorway. Talking to equipment was strange enough. But Jake was talking to her sacred armor like it was a sick child he was trying to heal. His bare hands were on the metal, touching surfaces that only priests were supposed to touch. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Jake looked up without embarrassment, listening. Listening to armor. Everything has a voice if you know how to hear it. Metal hums at certain frequencies. Crystal resonates in particular ways. Your armor is trying to tell me something. I just need to figure out what. Stepped closer, her expression caught between anger and confusion. "This is not how we repair things. You are using heat on the neural weave. Our smiths would say you are killing it faster." "Your smiths already said it was dead," Jake replied. "So what do I have to lose?" She could not argue with that logic, even though she wanted to. Over the next few hours, watched Jake work. His methods made no sense to her. He used tools meant for human machines, crude things of metal and plastic. He applied vibrations to the crystal using a device that looked like it belonged in a medical bay. He took readings with instruments she did not recognize and made notes in a small book. But what struck her most was his focus. He never rushed. He never showed frustration. When something did not work, he simply tried something else. There was a patience in him that she had not expected from such a short-lived species. "Why do you care so much?" she finally asked. "This is not your burden to carry." Jake set down his tools and looked at her. "My father was a repair technician on Colony 7. That was a hard place to live. Everything was always breaking, and there was never enough money for new parts. My father used to say that giving up on something was the same as throwing it away, and throwing things away was a luxury we could not afford. But this is not your armor. It is not your family's honor." "No," Jake agreed. "But I saw your face when you brought it in. I know what it looks like when someone is about to lose something they cannot replace. I have seen that look too many times in my life. If I can stop it this time, I will." Did not know what to say. Her people valued honor above almost everything. But they earned honor through battle, through strength, through victory over enemies. This human earned nothing from helping her. There was no glory in it, no reward, no advancement. He simply did it because he could not stand to see her lose. She was still thinking about this when Commander arrived. The commander walked into the engineering bay with two other officers behind him. His scales had darkened to the shade they turned when he was angry. He looked at the armor on Jake's workbench and then at Jake himself. "This has gone on long enough," said. "I gave you time out of respect for our warrior's desperate hope, but I will not allow sacred artifacts to be handled any longer by alien hands using primitive methods." Jake stood up slowly. He was much shorter than, and his body was soft compared to the commander's armored scales, but he did not back away. "I am not finished," Jake said. "Yes, you are. This armor belongs to the people. It should be preserved as a relic, not used as practice for human tinkering." "It is not a relic, it is still alive." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You dare contradict our master smiths. They have centuries of knowledge. You have been working on this for 3 days. Sometimes fresh eyes see things old eyes miss." The commander's hand moved toward his weapon. The two officers behind him tensed. The air in the small engineering bay became thick with danger. "Jake," Ben said quietly from the corner, "maybe you should just let them take it." But Jake did not move. He stood between and the armor like a wall, not threatening, not aggressive, just refusing to step aside. Watched this small human face down her commander, and something shifted inside her. She had thought humans were weak. She had thought they survived only because the galaxy tolerated their presence. But this man was not weak. His strength was simply different from what she had been taught to recognize. "Commander," she said, stepping forward, "the armor is mine. The decision should be mine as well." Turned to her with hard eyes. "You would choose this human over the wisdom of your own people." "I would choose hope over surrender," replied. "Our smiths gave up. This human has not. I want to see what he can do." The silence stretched long between them. Finally stepped back. "One more day," he said. "After that the armor returns to hands, no matter what state it is in." He left without another word. His officers followed. Jake let out a breath he had been holding. "Thank you," he said too. She looked at him with new eyes. "Do not make me regret it. One day, that is all you have." Jake turned back to the armor on his workbench. One day was not much time, but it was enough. The station's night cycle began, and Jake kept working. He had explained his theory to Ben earlier that evening. They built things to last forever. Their technology was beautiful and strong and precise. But because of this, they never learned how to fix things that truly broke. When something failed beyond their expectations, they simply declared it dead and moved on. Humans were different. Humans came from a world of limited resources and constant struggle. They could not afford to throw things away. So they learned to repair, to adapt, to find new life in broken machines. It was not elegant. It was not pretty, but it worked. The neural weave is not dead, Jake had said. It is in shock. Think of it like a human who has had a heart attack. The heart does not always stop completely. Sometimes it just needs help to start beating again. And you think you can do that? Ben asked. Give Alien Crystal a heart massage. Something like that. Now Jake was alone with the armor, and the real work had begun. He had built a small device using parts from 3 different machines. It could send precise electrical pulses at specific frequencies. In human medicine, something similar was used to stimulate damaged nerves. Jake hoped it would work on Crystal. He placed tiny contact points at 6 locations along the cracked neural weave. Each placement took almost an hour because the positions had to be exactly right. Too far off and nothing would happen. Too close to the wrong spot and he might cause more damage. His hands ached from the careful work. His eyes burned from staring at tiny details for too long, but he did not stop. At midnight, he sent the first pulse. Nothing happened. He adjusted the frequency and tried again. Still nothing. He tried a 3rd time, then a 4th. Each attempt taught him something new about how the crystal responded. Each failure brought him closer to understanding. On the 7th attempt, a tiny section of the neural weave flickered to life. Jake's heart jumped. It was working. The crystal was responding. He was so focused on this small victory that he did not hear enter the engineering bay. She stood in the doorway and watched him work for a long time before speaking. "You are still here," she said. Jake did not look up from his work. "I do not have much time left." Moved closer and saw the faint glow in a small part of the armor's chest plate. Her breath caught. "Is that what I think it is?" The neural weave is waking up. Not all of it, not yet. But this section is responding. I need to repeat the process for every damaged area. How long will that take? Hours, maybe until morning. Looked at Jake's hands. They were red and marked with small burns from earlier experiments that had gone wrong. He had never mentioned the pain. He had simply kept working. "You burned yourself," she said. "It happens." Jake finally looked up at her. His tired eyes held no complaint, no request for sympathy, just quiet determination. "The important thing is progress. Every mistake teaches me something." Had trained as a warrior since childhood. She had been taught that strength meant power, endurance meant fighting through pain, courage meant facing death without fear. But she was beginning to understand that there were other kinds of strength, other kinds of courage. This human had burned his hands trying to fix armor that was not his, for a person who had treated him with contempt, against odds that everyone said were impossible. He did not complain. He did not ask for thanks. He simply worked. "May I stay and watch?" she asked. Jake nodded. "If you want, but I warn you it is boring work. Lots of waiting between pulses." Sat on a metal crate near the workbench. "I do not mind waiting." Through the long hours of the night, she watched Jake perform his strange magic on her armor. He talked to her as he worked, explaining what he was doing and why. She did not understand all of it, but she liked the sound of his voice. It was calm and steady, like a river that knew exactly where it was going. "The sea neural weave is sacred," she said at one point. "They believe it carries the spirits of all who wore the armor before." Jake smiled slightly. "I believe it carries their electrical patterns. The crystal stores energy signatures from everyone who bonds with it. That is not so different from what you call spirits." "You do not believe in spirits." I believe that love and memory leave marks on the world. Whether you call those marks spirits or energy patterns or something else, the result is the same. The people who came before are still with us, written into the things they touched. Considered this. It was not how her people would express such ideas, but the meaning underneath was the same. By the time the station's lights began to brighten for the morning cycle, Jake had awakened more than half of the neuroweave. The armor glowed with soft light, brighter than it had in days. The cracks were still visible, but the crystal between them pulsed with life. Jake sat back in his chair and let out a long breath. His face was pale with exhaustion. His hands shook slightly from hours of careful work. "I need to rest," he admitted. "Just for a little while, then I can finish." "You have done so much already." "Not enough. Close is not finished. Close is just another kind of failure." He closed his eyes, and within seconds he was asleep in his chair. His body had simply given out. Watched him sleep. This strange human had worked through the entire night for her. He had burned his hands, pushed his body past its limits, and refused to give up even when everything seemed hopeless. All for armor that was not his, all for honor that he would never share. She did not understand humans. She had been taught that they were weak, primitive, unimportant in the grand scope of galactic civilization. But sitting here in this small engineering bay, watching this exhausted man sleep beside her glowing armor, she began to think that maybe her teachers had been wrong. Maybe strength was not what she had always believed it to be. She found a blanket in a storage cabinet and draped it over Jake's shoulders. Then she sat back down on her metal crate and kept watch over him while he slept. It was the least she could do. Jake woke to the smell of food. He opened his eyes slowly, confused for a moment about where he was. The engineering bay, the armor, the deadline. It all came back to him in a rush, and he sat up quickly. "Easy," said. "You need to eat before you start again." She was holding a tray with human food on it. Jake did not know where she had found it or how she had known what humans ate. But the sight of bread and eggs and something that looked like bacon made his stomach growl loudly. "You brought me breakfast?" he asked. "You worked through the night. I thought you might be hungry." She set the tray on a clear space on his workbench. "I also thought you might be foolish enough to skip eating and go straight back to work. This way, I can make sure you do not." Jake smiled despite his exhaustion. "Thank you." He ate quickly while sat nearby. The food was good, better than the usual station fare. She must have gotten it from one of the nicer restaurants in the trade quarter. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said between bites. "You may ask. I do not promise to answer." "Why does the armor matter so much? I mean, I know it is old and valuable, but there has to be more to it than that." Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "My mother wore this armor when she led the charge at Al Station. The enemy had us surrounded. Everyone thought we would die. But she stood at the front of our warriors and said that death was nothing to fear as long as we faced it with honor. She broke through their lines and saved 300 lives that day." She sounds like an amazing person. She was. She died 10 years ago peacefully in her bed, an old warrior who had earned her rest. Touched the armor gently. "When I wear this, I feel her with me. I hear her voice in my mind, telling me to be strong, to be brave, to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Losing this armor would be like losing her all over again." Jake nodded slowly. He understood now. This was not just metal and crystal. This was memory. This was love. This was everything that connected to her past and gave her strength for the future. "I will fix it," he said. "I promise." They worked together through the morning. Jake showed how to operate the pulse device, and she helped him position the contact points on the remaining damaged areas. Her hands were larger than his and not as nimble, but she learned quickly. And there was something meaningful about her being part of the repair, her own energy flowing into the work alongside his. By midday, almost all of the neural weave was glowing with restored life. Only one section remained dark, a stubborn cluster of cracks near the armor's shoulder. "This part is different," Jake said, studying it closely. "The damage is deeper here. The crystal has collapsed in on itself." "What does that mean?" "It means my usual approach will not work. I need to try something else." He thought for a long moment, turning the problem over in his mind. Then he had an idea. It was risky. It might not work, but they were running out of time. "The armor bonds with its wearer through neural connection, right?" he asked. "It reads your thoughts and responds to your intentions." "Yes, that is how it functions." "Then maybe the crystal does not need electrical pulses. Maybe it needs you." Frowned. "I do not understand." "Put your hand on the damaged section. Think about your mother. Think about your grandmother. Think about everyone who wore this armor before you. If the crystal stores their energy patterns, maybe your connection to them can wake it up." It sounded crazy. Even Jake knew it sounded crazy. But he had learned long ago that sometimes the crazy ideas were the only ones left. Hesitated. Then she placed her palm flat against the dark section of neural weave. She closed her eyes and thought about her mother. She remembered the sound of her laugh, the warmth of her arms, the fierce pride in her eyes when completed her warrior training. She thought about her grandmother, whom she had only known through stories. She thought about all the women who had carried this armor into battle and brought it home again. Under her hand, the crystal began to warm. Jake watched with wide eyes as the last section of neural weave flickered, struggled, and then burst into brilliant light. The entire armor was glowing now, every part of it alive and connected. The cracks remained visible, scars that would never fully disappear, but the crystal between them pulsed with power. "It worked," breathed. "It actually worked." Before they could celebrate, Commander appeared in the doorway. "Your time is up," he announced. Then he saw the armor and his words died in his throat. The glow of the neural weave was unmistakable. Even someone who knew nothing about craftsmanship could see that the armor was alive. Stared at it for a long moment, his expression shifting from suspicion to confusion to something that looked almost like fear. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our best smith said it could not be done." Jake stood up and faced him calmly. "Your smiths were not wrong about the damage. They were just wrong about the solution. Sometimes you need different eyes to see a different path." Looked at the armor, then at Jake, then at. He seemed to be fighting with himself, struggling to accept what was right in front of him. "The repair is complete," he asked finally. "Almost," Jake said. "The neural weave is restored, but the armor needs to be tested. It needs to bond with its owner again to make sure everything works properly." Nodded slowly. "Then we will test it, tonight in the ceremonial chamber, before witnesses." He turned and left without another word. But just before he disappeared, Jake saw something in his eyes that had not been there before. Respect the ceremonial chamber was filled with. Jake stood at the back of the room, trying to make himself as small as possible. He was the only human present. Ben had offered to come for support, but Jake had told him to stay away. This was a moment. He did not want to make it about himself. The chamber was beautiful in a severe way. The walls were made of dark stone carved with images of ancient battles. Braziers burned with blue flame at regular intervals. At the center of the room, a raised platform waited for the main event. Commander stood near the platform with a group of senior officers. Others filled the space behind them, warriors and priests and civilians who had heard the rumors and wanted to see for themselves. The air hummed with tension and curiosity. Entered through a side door, carrying her armor in her arms. She walked slowly, with the dignity of a warrior performing a sacred duty. The armor glowed faintly in the dim light, its neural weave pulsing with the steady rhythm of a heartbeat. Jake could see the cracks still visible in the crystal, thin lines that would never fully disappear. But between those cracks, life flowed strong and true. Stepped onto the platform and set the armor on a ceremonial stand. Then she turned to face the gathered crowd. "Many of you know what happened," she said. Her voice was clear and strong, filling the chamber. "My ancestral armor was damaged in battle. Our master smiths examined it and declared it beyond repair. The neural weave had died, they said. Nothing could bring it back." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. They had all heard this story. They were waiting to hear what came next. "I refused to accept that verdict," continued. "I sought help from an unlikely source. A human engineer named Jake agreed to try what our own people could not." More murmurs, louder this time. Some sounded skeptical, others sounded offended. The idea that a human could succeed where masters had failed was hard for many to accept. "He worked for days without rest. He burned his hands. He used methods our smiths would consider primitive or dangerous, but he never gave up. He treated my armor with more care and respect than I expected from any outsider, and in the end, he did what everyone said was impossible." Lifted the armor from its stand. She held it up so everyone could see the glowing neural weave, the living crystal, the proof of what had been achieved. "Only the human engineer fixed this armor," she said. Then she turned and looked directly at Jake, standing alone at the back of the chamber. And in her eyes, there was something he had never expected to see from a warrior. "Oh." The chamber went silent. Every eye turned to Follows' gaze. Jake felt his face grow hot under the attention. He had not wanted this. He had not done it for recognition or glory. He had simply done it because it needed to be done, and he was the one who could do it. Began to put on the armor. The crowd watched in tense silence as she secured each piece, the chest plate, the shoulder guards, the arm covers, the leg protectors. When the final piece was in place, she closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The armor responded. Every piece of neural weave blazed with sudden brilliant light. The crystal sang with a frequency that Jake could feel in his bones. The armor and the warrior became one, connected by bonds of energy and memory, and something that might have been called spirit. When opened her eyes, they glowed faintly with reflected light. "The bond is complete," she announced. "The armor lives. The connection to my ancestors remains unbroken." For a moment no one moved. Then Commander stepped forward. "This is unprecedented," he said slowly. "A human has repaired sacred technology. Our traditions do not know how to respond to such an event." He walked across the chamber toward Jake. The crowd parted to let him pass. Jake stood his ground, though part of him wanted to run, stopped directly in front of him, towering over the smaller human. "You have done something that our best craftsmen could not," said. "You have preserved an artifact that connects us to our history. You have saved a warrior's honor and her family's legacy." He paused. "Our people are proud, sometimes too proud. We forget that wisdom and skill can come from unexpected places." He raised his right hand and placed it over his heart in the traditional gesture of respect. "Thank you, human. You have earned the gratitude of the people." Jake did not know what to say, so he simply nodded and said, "You are welcome." Later, after the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Jake stood alone on the observation deck. The stars spread out before him, countless points of light in the endless dark. He often came here when he needed to think. He heard footsteps behind him and knew, without looking, that it was. She came to stand beside him, still wearing her restored armor. In the starlight, she looked like a warrior from legend, beautiful and dangerous and eternal. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said, away from the crowd. "You do not need to thank me. I was just doing my job." "No, this was far more than a job. You gave me back my family. You gave me back my mother." She turned to face him. "Among my people, such a debt cannot be repaid with words alone." "I do not need repayment." "I know that is part of what makes you remarkable." Was quiet for a moment. "When I first came to you, I thought humans were weak. I thought your species had nothing to offer the galaxy except bodies to fill space. I was wrong. We are not so different from you, Jake said. We just show our strength in different ways. Yes, I understand that now. Reached up and touched the shoulder of her armor where the deepest cracks remained visible. My armor now carries a new story, the story of the human who would not give up. Future generations of my family will know your name, Jake. They will know what you did. Jake smiled slightly. That is more than I ever expected. You should expect more. You deserve it. Paused, then added softly, if you ever need anything for any reason, you have a friend among the. You have earned a place in my family's history, and you will always have a place at my side. She touched his shoulder gently, then turned and walked away. Jake watched her go. Then he turned back to the stars and stood there for a long time, thinking about armor and crystals and the strange ways that life brought people together. Tomorrow he would return to the engineering bay. There would be new problems to solve, new machines to fix, new challenges that everyone said were impossible, and he would face them the same way he always did. With patience, with determination, with the quiet certainty that broken did not mean finished. Somewhere in the galaxy, there was always something that needed fixing. And Jake would be there to fix it. It had to be enough.